I graduated from college about 8 months ago with a degree in communications, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, has been incredibly useful in helping me secure gainful employment. That's sarcasm, by the way. I'm still living with my parents, and I haven't been able to find a real job yet, so I'm off to a great start. In the meantime, I drive for Uber and Uber Eats, sometimes both in the same night, depending on what's popping. It's not a career, but it's money, and it lets me feel like I'm doing something productive while I figure my life out. I know that sounds kind of pathetic, but it's what I've got right now. I drive mostly on weekend nights, Friday and Saturday, usually from around 9 p.m. until 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when the surge pricing kicks in and the drunk college kids need rides home from the bars downtown. It's not technically a night shift, but it feels like one. This happened a few weeks ago. It was a Saturday night, maybe around 1:30, and I was about ready to call it. I was about to turn off the app when one more request came through. The pickup was downtown, which was fine, but the drop-off location was really far away, past the suburbs even. I almost declined it for that reason, but the fare was too good. The girl I picked up was completely normal. The drive took about 40 minutes. By the time I dropped her off, it was past 2. And then I was alone, out in the middle of absolutely nowhere with a 40-minute drive back to civilization. I turned the car around and started heading home. Not 10 minutes into the drive, I saw a car stopped in the middle of the road with its hazards on. I approached cautiously, and I realized there were 2 people standing in front of the car, waving their arms like they were trying to flag me down. My first instinct was actually not to stop, but I'm someone who can't just ignore a person in need. So against my better judgment, I decided to stop. I stopped the car about 20 feet away from them and rolled my window down a few inches. Just enough to hear them, but not enough for someone to reach inside. It was a middle-aged couple, which actually put me at ease a little. That is, until they started talking. The woman did most of the talking. She had this frantic energy about her, but also something that felt slightly rehearsed, like she'd given the speech before. She said they were warning drivers about a collapsed bridge ahead. She went on to say it happened earlier that day, and they'd almost driven right off themselves. She pointed down the road into the darkness, and said if I kept going that way, I'd end up in the river. So naturally, I asked them what I should do instead. The husband spoke of a turnoff that was about halfway between where we were and the bridge. He said it cut through the woods, and that it would add some time to my drive, but it would get me back to the main highway without having to deal with the bridge. I thanked them and started driving. Something felt off. I didn't know what it was, but I knew one thing. I was going to trust my gut and just drive the way I had been intending to go. About a mile down the road, I saw the turnoff they'd been talking about. It was this narrow dirt path that disappeared into the trees, and it was barely wide enough for one car. I decided to keep driving, and a few minutes later, I reached the bridge. I slowed down a little, but it was fine. It wasn't collapsed for sure, and it didn't even look damaged at all. I drove across it without any issues and made it back to the main highway a few minutes later. Even though nothing happened, the experience stuck with me to the point where I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I'd followed that couple's instructions, if I turned down that dirt road alone in the middle of the night. A few days later, the curiosity got the better of me and I did something stupid. I drove back out there. It was the middle of the afternoon this time, broad daylight, which made me feel slightly less insane about the whole thing. I retraced my route from that night. Those people weren't there this time, obviously. When I got to the turnoff, that dirt path into the woods, I slowed down and pulled over. To my surprise, there was something new. There was a sign nailed to a tree right at the entrance of the path that simply said, "Dead End." That sign hadn't been there before. I would have definitely noticed it that night, even in the dark. Someone had put it up in the last few days. I sat in my car for a minute, staring at the path. In the daylight, it didn't look quite as ominous. It was just a narrow dirt road that disappeared into some dense trees. I wanted to explore it a little, but I was worried about my car getting stuck, so I decided to go it on foot. I'm not sure what I was expecting to find, but being that there was daylight out, I really wasn't scared at all. I turned off my engine. As soon as I stepped out of the car, though, I got a bad feeling. I stood there at the edge of the path, trying to see further down, but there wasn't much to see really. I don't know what it was, but something about standing there and actually being out in the open discouraged me from walking in. Things went from 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds. As I was turning around and walking back to my car, I heard a scream ring out behind me. It was this awful scream, definitely a woman's, and it came from somewhere deep in the woods down the path. I can't tell you how fast I was out of there. Before I could even think, I was already speeding away. I don't think I've ever been so scared before, and that was about 2 weeks ago. I haven't been back to that spot since, but here's the thing. I can't stop thinking about it. Part of me knows I should just leave it alone, but I've been thinking about asking one of my friends to come out there with me. If I do, I'll record a video and send it, but for now, all I can really do is wonder about that scream and the... My name is Thomas. I've been working the late shift at our local Burger King for about 2 years now. It's not glamorous, but it pays rent and the hours work for me. I'm a night owl anyway, so being behind the drive-thru window from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. doesn't bother me the way it would most people. This all started maybe a month ago. I was working the drive-thru solo. We're usually understaffed after midnight, and that's when a car pulled up to the speaker. Male voice, pretty unremarkable. He ordered a large double Whopper with cheese meal with a Coke. It was pretty standard. The one notable thing about the encounter was when he went to pay, he only rolled the window down just enough to slide his card through, and his windows were tinted so I couldn't see his face. He paid and I handed him his receipt, but then he just drove off, like without stopping at the second window to grab his food. I waited there with his bag for a few minutes, wondering if he'd be coming back. Eventually, I just set the order aside and ended up eating it later. People do weird stuff sometimes, so I didn't think about it too much. About a week later, it happened again. It was the same order and the same exact thing happened. Someone paid at the first window and then drove off before picking up the food. I remember thinking, that's strange. Someone did the exact same thing last week. But I wasn't quite able to connect the dots at that point. I just figured it was a coincidence. It wasn't until it happened a third time that I realized it was the same person making these orders. At that point, I knew something weird was going on, but I wasn't going to complain. The food was made, paid for, and I was the one who got to enjoy it, so I kept eating the free Whopper meals and tried not to think too hard about why some random dude was essentially buying me dinner every few days. This went on for a few more weeks. The guy would show up every 4 or 5 days, always late, usually between 1 and 3 a.m., and always with the same order. I started to almost look forward to it in a weird way. Like, it's been a few days. Wonder if my mysterious benefactor is going to show up tonight. One night, I was working the speaker at around 2 a.m. when I heard that familiar voice through the speaker. I knew what was about to happen, and I was right. He ordered the same meal, which I knew I'd be eating. But this time, he said something else. Something that made me freeze up. He said, and I'll never forget this, "I hope you've been enjoying those Whoppers, Mr. Hurley." My last name is Hurley. I don't wear a name tag with my last name on it. It's not posted anywhere customers can see. There's no reason at all that this guy should know my last name. I just stood there for a second, not saying anything. My brain couldn't catch up. Then I started talking into the speaker, asking who this was, what he wanted, and how he knew my name. I must have said "who is this" 4 or 5 times, but he never answered. And this time, he didn't even pull up to pay. I heard his engine rev, and then he was gone. I was rattled for the rest of my shift. There was nothing I could do, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Little did I know, things were about to get much worse. When I got home after my shift, I found a note on my doorstep. It was a handwritten note that said, "I know what you did. You have 3 days." I just stood there staring at it with my hands shaking, and I started feeling really, really sick, like someone had punched me in the gut. I have no idea what I supposedly did. I've been racking my brain trying to think of anything that could explain this, but I've got nothing. This sounds so stupid, but I don't have enemies or secrets. I'm a 24-year-old guy that works at Burger King and plays video games on his days off. I'm not exactly living the most exciting life. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I just sat on my couch with the lights on, dreading whatever was going to happen next. But nothing happened. I had no choice but to just move on. It turned out I wouldn't have to wait that long, because the next night at work, that guy was back. This time, he didn't even bother playing games. Instead of ordering food, he just asked me to write something down. Then, before I could even respond, he gave me an address. It was some random place on the outskirts of town, in an area I didn't recognize. And then he told me I had 2 days to deliver him $10,000. I damn near laughed at that. I didn't think he was serious, but he clearly wasn't kidding. As soon as he drove off, I immediately went back to being terrified. There was absolutely no way I'd be giving that guy $10,000. I didn't even have $10,000. I still don't. So I decided to ignore it. I figured it had to be some elaborate scam or prank from someone I knew. I should have called the police right then, but I didn't even think of that. 3 nights later, I thought things were over. I hadn't dropped any money off, and nothing had happened. But of course, I was wrong. I was sitting there watching TV, winding down for my shift, when out of nowhere, I was jolted up by the sound of shattering glass. I hit the floor on instinct, thinking someone was shooting at me. But when I finally got up and looked around, I realized someone had just thrown a rock through my window. By the time I went to look outside, whoever had been there was long gone. This time, I called the police. I told them everything, including the address I had been given, and they said they'd check it out and told me to stay vigilant. They really didn't do much, they just told me they'd patrol the area a little more closely, and that without any doorstep footage, which I obviously don't have, there was nothing they could do. And that was 3 days ago. I've called in sick to work the last 3 nights, but I don't even think that's gonna do anything since the guy clearly knows where I live. I can't afford to not work, and I can't afford to move, so I'm stuck in this nightmare until the police can track that person down. I think I might try getting them to track the credit card number that the guy used to pay for the Whopper meals, but other than that, I'm not really sure what to do. Why I got targeted, I have no idea. Hopefully things don't escalate from here.